All right, so welcome everyone. My name is Sergeant First Class Aaron McEvers. I am the EOA for 2nd Brigade Strike. And with me today is Markus Hawkins. He is a resilience specialist that I have been working with here very closely. And at this time, I'll give him an opportunity to speak about himself and introduce himself.
Yes, I appreciate that, Sergeant First Class. My name is Markus Hawkins. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised, the home that LeBron left twice, as I usually like to say.
Yeah.
Finished my master's at Temple University, and I am a member of the R2 Performance Center here at Fort Bliss.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. What we're going to talk about today and what we're going to share with the members of my organization is we're going to talk about how the Army expects us to speak out and speak up whenever we see something wrong, be it a violation of policy, some moral infraction or questionable ethics. The expectation is that, hey, we speak out and say something, but do you think that expectation is aligned with realistic outcomes?
I mean, yes and no. On one hand, it's really not difficult to report when you see something wrong. When you know better, you do better, right? But on the other hand, there's a lot of factors that play into people speaking up and gathering help. So it's realistic, but it's something that's very situation dependent at times, I think.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And I think we do a good job as an organization trying to convince soldiers that they have the power to speak up and that they should speak up and speak out when they see something that needs to be corrected. But I think where we fail as an organization is I think we fail to account for all the reasons why soldiers don't, or they are reluctant or they hesitate to speak out. I've taken some complaints in my capacity as an EO advisor, but at the back of my mind, I always have that thought: is there more out there that soldiers, for a combination of factors or for a variety of reasons, they don't want to speak up to me or they don't want to come see me because there's issues with, either they feel it's not their job, it's not their role, and that's when we get into bystander effect, diffusion of responsibility. Hey, it's somebody else needs to say something, or there's some power imbalances. I can't go, I'm a PFC, I can't go report my sergeant first class, I'm just a PFC, he's too high ranking. Or where we get into, hey, I fear that it's going to cost me, meaning it's going to cost me status, it's going to create a hardship for me. And I think we need to educate about those impediments in order to counteract them. If we don't talk about what's keeping you as a soldier, and I'll give an example, a hypothetical. There is hazing and bullying that goes on, and there are soldiers that are teased, humiliated, mocked. It could be for their manner of speaking English because maybe that English isn't their first language. And on the surface, soldiers may kind of think of it as, oh, it's just some playful teasing to kind of, de-stress our stressful environment, but it's actually harmful. And then it becomes, I don't want to say anything because if I'm the one that makes myself vulnerable by sticking my neck out for this guy or gal, it could cost me. And I think even though we know it's the right thing to do, we know we should put a stop to it. I think there's an equation that gets done. There's some mental calculus. And I think we need to identify situations where we could predict a soldier's probably not going to say anything, given all these factors, versus when we think people will speak up. I'm sorry for monologuing. I'll let you respond there.
No, I think that, there's plenty of situations where soldiers probably wouldn't feel the most comfortable speaking out.
Mm-hmm.
Lower ranking to, a upper ranking official, or whether you're just new to the unit, right? Like nobody wants to be quote unquote that guy, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, moving into a unit, you're trying to find your way around, you're relocating, you want to build that family base,
Right.
right? You want to get in where you fit in, you want to blend in. You know, I was always taught that the nail that sticks out gets hammered in, right?
Mhm.
So it's a little difficult for a lot of soldiers, especially the younger guys, right? Or, you know, the younger soldiers being, you know, fresh out of basic, and now here you are and you're expected to fall into this unit, and now you're doing it for real.
Yeah.
You know, and it can make it very difficult because you haven't even identified allies yet.
Right.
You know, you don't know who's who you're not really sure how to operate in this new environment. And then all of a sudden you stumble across something wrong. How do you handle that? You know?
Absolutely. So I think what we want to get into is not only we need to generate discussions at the lowest unit level. And that's my intent of this conversation, is that we can empower and maybe compel some squad leaders and some team leaders to sit down with their young soldiers and discuss with them, hey, I can empathize with you in some respects. I can understand how difficult it might be for you to speak out and take care of your brothers and sisters, your left and right. But we need to have this conversation. We need to, you need to understand that if there's breaches of policy, you know, personal morality, business ethics that are going to negatively impact us as a team, it needs to be brought forward. It needs to be taken to the appropriate agency. And I think that if we can educate leaders, part of the purpose of this video, and get them to speak with their soldiers and have frank conversations and ask them, hey, if I'm wrong, if I as a leader am doing something wrong, and we can discuss the semantics of how you define wrong, but just take the general term, wrong. If I'm wrong as a leader, what stops you from correcting me? Okay. Or if another leader's wrong, what's stopping you from bringing that problem to me so we can work together to correct the situation and make the organization better? And I think that's where we want to go.
And, you know, research shows us, you know, in the psychology field, research shows us it's 9 times out of 10, it's not the lack of wanting to speak up or wanting to engage.
Okay. Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it's either you're not really sure what to do,
Mhm.
you're not sure who to bring this to, or you're not trusting who you're appointed to.
Right.
Right? There has to be a underlying level of trust there in that relationship.
Yeah.
You know, it's very easy to sit a soldier down, or sit anyone down for that matter, and it's like, hey, you can come to me. If there's something going on, you can come to me, right? But if that trust isn't there, that relationship wasn't built prior, and that foundation wasn't laid prior, it's somewhat of an unfair ask and an unrealistic expectation, right? Like, you wouldn't, if you don't know the guy 3 houses down, you're not gonna run to him when your marriage is falling apart, right? Like, that's an unfair ask.
Yeah.
But you've taken the time to talk to that soldier about life, you know, and about his hobbies and his interests and his goals within the military. Just by having those basic everyday conversation, you're building trust. You know, think of trust almost as if as a piggy bank, right? Every time that you're having these engaging conversations and you're actually taking interest into that soldier's life, you're adding money to the trust bank, to the trust fund, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm coining that. I'm trademarking that. Right?
Well,
adding to the trust bank.
I've said good leadership yields a compound interest, in that it just keeps compounding, and it spreads to other situations. I think something else we could talk about, and you kind of alluded to it, was pluralistic ignorance. That kind of plays a role in too. And for those that are listening, and correct me if I'm wrong, my interpretation of it is if you and I, if we're a group of people and we're witnessing, say, an uncomfortable situation where a soldier's being belittled, mocked, hazed, abused, bullied, whatever, sometimes we get to thinking, man, we have an internal dialogue where we're like, I can't believe I'm the only one that thinks this is wrong. Why aren't other people speaking up? I'm alone. You know, you get that feeling. And I think soldiers need to understand that probably you're not the only one feeling that way. Okay. Everybody's locked in that one. I'm glad it's not me that's not being subjected to this treatment. And then the other part is, why isn't anybody saying anything? Am I kind of on the mark there?
I'm actually glad that you did bring up pleural ignorance, because it's the thought of, yeah, like it's the thought of, okay, if this was so wrong, if this was so alarming, then more people would be doing something.
Right.
Like surely by now someone, and it's ironic. I actually have a story. I just flew home a couple of weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, and I'm on the flight. And I don't know if it's new, if it's a new feature, or if it's something that I've never really paid attention to or realized. But I was on the plane, they cut the lights on, and I'm seeing like fog or smoke coming from the air ducts. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that doesn't really seem, that doesn't seem like a good sign to me.
Yeah.
But I'm looking around and I'm looking at everyone else, and no one else is paying it any mind. No one's paying it any attention. Right. So I convinced myself that surely it must be fine. Right. If no one else is concerned about it, why am I concerned about it? There's 100 people on this flight. And just that quick second of shifting my belief or shifting that concern or downplaying that concern that I had, can be the difference of life and death for someone.
Yeah.
Right. Those split seconds, it shifts everything for you. So if you see something, if you're feeling something is wrong, you don't necessarily need to wait on everyone else to be alarmed for it.
Right.
And that's the hill that we have to get over. We don't need everyone else's, I guess, we don't need everyone else's. I'm struggling.
Well, I think what you're getting at is sometimes when in situations of potential peril or where it's kind of ambiguous, we reference our response off somebody else.
Exactly.
Like if Markus had just sat there and been like, that's not a big deal, I might have been sitting a couple seats over and be like, I think this is a big deal, but let me look at what Markus's body language is saying. And then if Markus is calm and cool, I'll be like, I guess it's not a big deal. But if Markus appears tense and upset, then it's going to make me tense and upset. And I think that's where we reference behavioral cues from our peers.
Sure.
And I think something else we need to talk about is ambiguous situations. When there's ambiguity in the situation, like, is he really harassing, hazing, bullying, he or she really harassing, hazing, bullying a soldier, or is that just how we do it here? I think the more ambiguous the situation, that's where we run the risk of soldiers are less likely to come forward. Now, if you're the recipient of that behavior, you rarely feel ambiguous about it. You're like, wow, I do not enjoy what is happening to me right now. I wish somebody was my ally and would come forward. But you and I may be sitting off to the side, be like, hey, we're kind of low status, low rank in this organization. Maybe we just got here. We don't really know what's going on. And it's a risk to us to speak up. Now, I think the counter to that is we have to develop cultures and organizations where we don't punish, so to speak. And I use that term generally very loosely. There's little to no cost for coming forward. Or maybe we develop a strategy where we ask that question. Hey, is that right? Should they be doing that? Should this be happening? And that may be the impetus to get other people to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't think he should be talking to her that way, or she should be talking to him, vice versa. Am I kind of on point there?
And I think you're spot on. We look at fear, and fear is one of the strongest emotions that we have.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're if you're living in a culture that is predicated on fear, your odds of speaking out or defending or coming to the rescue of someone else is very, very slim to none.
Yes.
Because what we've seen is that the actual repercussions of speaking out or the repercussions of coming to someone's defense, sometimes it might outlast the repercussions of the actual act itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
We hear the saying all of the time, or your reputation precedes you,
Mhm.
right? If and what we know is within the military community, it's very small, and soldiers are going to know more way before the leadership actually ever finds out about things, right? So you're operating within this small ecosystem of soldiers, and word is spreading, word is spreading, word is spreading. And that fear, especially, you know, a younger soldier or a soldier who, you know, might be going to the board soon, right? Like that fear
Right.
of, you know, now conflicting with my career progression, conflicting with my salary. It's for a lot of soldiers, they don't deem it worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll relate, and I don't think I'm divulging any too much information, but I had a soldier come to me with anonymously with a problem, and the reason he wanted to remain anonymous was because of his position within the organization. He felt like his forward progression was going to be jeopardized if he came out and said, "Hey, I want to put my name to this," as opposed to doing it anonymously. And I thanked him. I think it shows great courage, and it's admirable in both respects because he was motivated to take care of a soldier. That's why he came forward, but he still had to condition it with, "Look, I still feel at risk. My position, my status within the organization is at risk." And I think that's where we need to get after as leadership, and we need to do better at letting our members know, hey, as long as you're truthful, you're not going to be the one that feels any repercussions from this.
You know, I think as long as the fear of the outcome outweighs the need for justice, whether it's, you know, engaging in a heinous act, or just, sorry about that, or just, you know, solely watching or listening to a soldier be berated, right?
Yeah.
As long as that fear of that outcome outweighs that want to
Yeah.
help and that want to do right, we're always going to be at this crossroads and this
Yeah.
it's tough.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's really tough being in this situation because you're looking at soldiers who, for the most of them, majority of them, they want to do right. This is why they're here. This is why they enlisted. This is why
Yeah.
they joined.
Right.
You know, but that fear of repercussion is strong. Fear is a strong emotion.
Retaliation and reprisal is, although we offer protections
Yeah.
in codified in legal language, it doesn't necessarily translate down to the lowest level. Like, I know there's federal law that protects me, you know, the military whistleblower act against retaliation and reprisal, but on a day-to-day basis, the soldiers can't visualize that protection when they know they've still got to work with those individuals. And that's a struggle that we've got to get better. That's where culture and organization comes into play. You know,
Sure.
that soldier has to feel that not only am I legally protected, but there are day-to-day protective factors
Yes.
that are going to, you know, minimize any chance that this is going to come at a cost to me.
Because what we know is, you know, legal protection doesn't necessarily protect you. Yes, you have the rules in black and white, and you have the contractual protection that you have, but at the same time, that's not protecting you culturally, right?
No.
When you can't sit with the cool kids at the lunch table,
Right.
that doesn't help you when you're
Right.
going through your day to day. So
Yeah.
we have to try to close that gap, try to bridge that gap.
Absolutely.
Good part.
Absolutely. So this is where I'm gonna, as much as I've enjoyed our back and forth, this is where I'm gonna ask you to refer to your expertise. How can R2 help us be more effective at communicating situations, or communicating in situations like this where things need to be corrected?
Yeah, the R2 Performance Center, we have a plethora of tools and techniques that can help you sidestep things such as this. Right. So my official role, I am a MRTPE. I'm a Master Resilience Trainer, Performance Expert. So on one half of my title, you have the MRTs, right? When you earn the 8 Romeo identifier. But on the other half, we do solely performance work. So we'll actually come out into the field with you.
Okay.
Opening up the Master Resilience catalog, we have a technique which we call the ideal model. The ideal model is specifically used for confronting someone about a conflict or a challenge.
Okay.
This entire model is for.
Yeah.
When opening up this model or when using this model, there's 3 C's that you have to be aware of.
Okay.
You want to make sure that you're being clear, confident, and controlled. When I say clear, you want to be clear about the message that you're conveying. You want to be confident that in your ability to handle the situation.
Yeah.
Right? You also want to be controlled with your own emotions. You want to make sure that you're regulating and modulating yourself as you're bringing up these difficult conversations. Because of course, when you're practicing in your room in the mirror, it's quite easy to go ahead and talk to your lieutenant colonel and have that conversation, right?
Right.
But when you're actually standing there and he or she is standing there, words get very hard. You know,
the difference between practice and game time.
For sure. And that's why we always tell people to practice how you play.
Right.
You want to make sure that when you're regulating this and when you're practicing this, when you're practicing this, you want to make sure that you're practicing this in a way that's going to be as similar to the conversation as possible. Right. So with the ideal model, as we know, the Army likes their acronyms. I have one more for you.
Yeah.
You want to be able to identify and understand. You want to be able to identify what the issue is, but you want to make sure that they're understanding the issue as well.
Absolutely.
You want to describe the problem objectively and accurately.
Okay.
Right. And it's difficult to have a conversation when you're on 2 separate pages.
Right.
Right. So you want to make sure that when you're describing this issue, that you're describing it as accurately as possible so that you guys are following along.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you're taking the time to actually express your concerns, but it's only when it's appropriate, right? So if you're being, there's a term that you guys have, corrective training.
Yes.
Right. So when you're being corrected, this is not the time to tell your superior officer how you feel about this, right? And express
if I'm mid push-up, that isn't the time to engage in that
It's not the time.
Yeah.
Right. There's a time and a place, you know, as the kids say these days, read the room. Right.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for everything. And then second to last, you want to ask the other person for his or her perspective and then ask for a reasonable change. Right. So as we know, when we're in the heat of the moment and we're worked up about something, we are 100% sure we are seeing what we're seeing.
Right.
100% sure, tunnel vision. 2 to 3 hours later, as you've come down and you've had time, you've taken your shower, you've gone for your drive, you've walked the dog, whatever your method is to calm down, you're like, she did ask me yesterday to stop and get milk. And this was her 4th time this week asking, right? Like, that's when we start to weigh in all of the other things that we're not seeing when we're fired up.
Right.
So it's very important to ask the other person for their perspective, just to make sure that you guys are seeing, again, you're on the same page. You're having the same conversation. Because when you're asking the other person for their perspective, you're going from having the wrong fight to the right conversation.
Oh, that's huge. Wrong fight to the right conversation. Yeah.
But you also want to make sure that you're asking for a reasonable change.
Right.
So if you're confronting one of your soldiers and he's late for PT, it's not a reasonable change for you to ask him to never be late again. Never be late this year again. Right. That's not reasonable. Things happen. You know, never forget to bring milk home again. That's not a reasonable change.
Right.
So sitting down with that person, and here's when you're actually engaging with them, and this is conversation, or you transferring through this model. It's going from a lecture now to a conversation.
Yes.
Because now you're asking for what their perspective is. And lastly, just list the positive outcomes that's going to occur if that person makes that agreed upon change. Right? Like, I think you're a great soldier. Right? I think you're going to have a lot of added benefit to this unit. If we can just get you here to PT on time, then I can send you to that school that you really want to go to.
Right. Yeah.
And now that person is bought in, because now you're leveraging something that they're actually motivated to do. These are the positives, right? I understand that you're going to forget the milk, right? But if you get the milk the night before, right? Or if you, whatever the case is, just some type of reasonable, positive outcome that's going to occur if this person makes that agreed upon change.
Okay. And I like when you say list, you know, the positive outcomes if we enact that change, because I think what that shows is everybody benefits. A lot of
Sure.
times when I think there's a little bit of disconnect when I'm making a correction on a soldier, they think I'm the only one that benefits. I benefit, so I don't have to observe that behavior that upset me in the first place. No,
Sure.
it's actually going to improve our relationship in multiple directions, and I think that's important. That's an important step that needs to get listed.
For sure.
And I think if we think about the usefulness of this model, this ideal model, and communicating assertively using the 3 C's, there's multiple applications for it. Okay, my focus is on eliminating the corrosive behaviors within the organization. What we refer to as the 3 corrosive behaviors: extremism, racism, sexual harassment, sexual assault, and suicidal ideations. Okay, we've got to eliminate / reduce those behaviors. This model is effective at correcting things that we think contribute to those corrosive behaviors, but it has benefit in one's personal life. And I think when you talk about, you mentioned going to the board, let's say you're that soldier that is competing against his or her peers, and you really haven't been given the green light in that, hey, you're going to the promotion board, we're going to make you a sergeant, but yet you feel like you're ready for that next step. Okay, this also has practical applications, because I had this conversation when I was an E5 with my first sergeant. I went to him, I saw some of my peers getting promoted, and I said, hey, first sergeant, I want to go to the board, because I was a gunner on the commander's tank, and he wheeled on me, and he didn't say no, but he goes, tell me why are you ready? And I was like, ooh, I'm not prepared for this conversation. I did a little bit of tap dancing. I improv'd an acceptable answer. I got sent to the board, but that could have gone the other way.
Sure.
He could have seen through my attempt to tap dance and been like, no, you need some more work. Okay.
For
And
sure.
having the ability to reference that ideal model would have benefited me in that situation. And there's other soldiers in similar situations. We tend to think that I know we kind of may have framed this conversation in, hey, we want to eliminate improper behavior. Use this tool that Markus just gave us. So you're empowered to speak out and speak up. But I think it's important that I message that what you're teaching has more practical applications than just that, right?
For sure. And, a lot of people, they look at the skills that we're teaching and they're saying, oh, okay, well, this only works in this application. No,
right.
You can go home and you could teach this to your spouse. You could teach this to your children.
Yeah.
The skills and the techniques and the tools that we're providing you with, they're universal.
Right.
They're universal skills that can be applied to a multitude of facets.
Yeah.
A multitude. It's all about your comfort in the skill and your confidence in the ability to deliver the skill.
Okay. I agree 100%. So if I've learned the skill, what's my next step? You've taught me this skill, Markus. You personally taught me this skill. What's your one bit of advice you want to part with?
This skill, mental skills are just like any other skill. Mm-hmm. It's no different than any physical skill that you can learn. It comes with repetition. It takes practice. This is not a skill that you could learn and then you can go ahead and put it on the shelf until you need it and dust it off whenever you need it again. That's not how this works, right? You doing that is the equivalent to trying a move in a game that you have never practiced before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like that's not going to work. And you're probably going to be sitting with the coach for the rest of the game. Right. And it's the same with these skills. If you want it to work in your desired way, if you have a desired outcome when you're using this skill, then you've got to practice that outcome. You have to practice like you play.
Yeah.
Right. And
absolutely.
I think if I could leave you with anything, just practice. Be patient, understanding with yourself. Understand that it's going to take time. Remember to regulate your emotions when using this skill. Take the time, take that extra second to take those deliberate breaths. Right.
Yeah.
What you're hearing might not actually be what they're saying.
Right.
Take your time, regulate your emotions, and understand that it's going to come with time. This is not a fail-proof model. This is not something I'm 100% guaranteeing or your money
Right.
back. But
Right.
what I will say is that it works. It works
Okay.
if you practice it.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So I think what I would close with, the message I would want to close with is leaders need to look internally at how well they handle bad news. Okay. If you're the kind of leader that your soldiers don't feel comfortable bringing you bad news and they have to rehearse this skill prior to having, like, say, hey, I couldn't get something done, that was asked of me, or something went terribly wrong in this tasking you gave me. I don't feel like if I as a leader am not setting the conditions where my soldiers can approach me and say, hey, Sergeant, I know this is what you wanted done. This is what we were unable to get it done. And talk openly and plainly with their subordinates about failure, and about things that happen that are inappropriate within the organization. Basically what I'm trying to say is I would question, are you the kind of leader that your soldiers have to look in the mirror and rehearse this ideal model every time before they speak to you? Or are you approachable? Do you tolerate bad news well? Are you able to withstand correction? Or are you the kind of leader where my soldiers have to rehearse a script before they come bring you bad news? Everybody loves talking about good news. That's the easy part. When everything's going well, this is outside of our realm of awareness. But it's when things are going poorly or things need to be corrected, that's when we've got to kind of, we're aware of the difficulties and the intricacies of the communications that we're having. I do, unless you have any final thoughts, Marcus, I think we've had a very productive conversation. I know I've enjoyed it. And I think we should do this more in the future.
100%.
Yeah. So any final thoughts for the good of the group, Marcus?
Just remember to breathe. With all else fails, just remember to breathe. You have to keep breathing. And that's one thing I think we're all experts in. Yeah. We've been doing it for our entire lives. Just it's important to remember to breathe even in those tough times.
Okay.
4 steps equal progress, no matter how small.
That's right. That's right. So, all right, Marcus. Well, I thank you for being a part of this, and I look forward to doing more good with you in the future. Have a good day, brother.
Cannot wait.
All right.